Hello, fans. This is Corey here with my brother Roy.
Hey, guys.
And this is the CoryTellAllSports post-game podcast. So, the Seattle Seahawks are Super Bowl champions, beating the Denver Broncos 43-8 in the third largest blowout in Super Bowl history, only behind the 49ers win over the Broncos in 1990, 55-10, and the Bears demolishing of the Patriots in 1986, 46-10. So, the Denver Broncos go down in defeat, and the Seahawks bring back a trophy to Seattle. Roy, the 12th man must be going crazy.
The 12th man in Seattle, we're going crazy, and it's well-deserved. The Seattle fans are some of the best fans out there from every sport, soccer, but especially in football, and I mean, they deserve a trophy. The last trophy they got was in 1979 when the Supersonics, who they don't like to talk about anymore, beat the Bullets.
Yeah, so I mean, something good happening for Seattle after, obviously, their Supersonics left for Oklahoma City, which they're still a little upset about. But, I mean, they really deserve this Super Bowl. Great fans, and Seattle was really probably the best team all season.
Mm-hmm.
And so, just to talk about the game real briefly, coming out in the second half, obviously it's a 22-0 hole that the Broncos have found themselves in, down by 3 scores. Hard to come over, and first kick of the game goes to Percy Harvin, and
a dagger in the heart. I mean, Percy Harvin, electrifying, such an athletic player. Barely got any touches all season. The trade really looked, for a first-round pick, I believe it was, back to the Minnesota Vikings. It looked like an almost stupid trade, but when you win the Super Bowl, and definitely one of the reasons why. I mean, Percy Harvin just had so many touches. He had a 45 rushing yards, I believe, on 2 carries. A big 30-yard rush to open the game. And whenever you can get an athletic player like him touches, it's just going to help your team tremendously.
Yeah, so Percy Harvin comes out an 87-yard kickoff return, the 10th in Super Bowl history, and he puts the Seahawks up by 4 scores, and that pretty much put the nail in the coffin for the game. Seahawks never going to lose, up 29 points. Pretty much the rest of the game was just them running out the clock, and really Denver just putting some stats up and nothing else.
Yeah, and it was so talked about, offense versus defense, and how all year and through the past couple of years, we've talked about how the game has been more of a passing game and how the offense is now dominating. But the Seahawks just demolished that statement. They single-handedly turned the game, in my opinion. The Seahawks defense was just amazing, and they basically took Peyton Manning out of his environment and just made him do nothing.
Yeah, so a very odd game overall from many standpoints. First, this is the first ever 43-8 scoreline in the history of the NFL.
Scoreline.
Yeah. So the first that has ever happened. We had 2 Super Bowl records that went down for the Broncos, despite the fact that they lost by 35 points. Peyton set the Super Bowl record for most completions with 34.
But also, Corey had 5.7 average per pass. That is terrible if you look at the league averages. That is really bad. So many dink and dunk throws. They need some longer throws. I believe they only had 2 passes over 20 yards.
They did.
That is very bad, considering they were down so much.
Yeah, so Peyton obviously struggled, a QBR of 24.4, which was well below what he was doing for the entire year. And also, Demaryius Thomas had 13 catches, which is a Super Bowl record. But, I mean, a lot of those were screen passes, and as you said, not far down the field, and they didn't really stretch the Seattle defense.
And continuing with the oddities of the game, I believe the Seahawks had scored 6 different ways. Field goal, kickoff return, passing for a touchdown, running for a touchdown, an interception return, and a safety. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's only a few more ways you can score. I mean, it was just a very odd and crazy game.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think anybody before the game would have predicted a tie for the third largest blowout. Denver was the favorite going into the game in Vegas, and I mean, they just did not have a good performance out there. Seattle's defense, which obviously played really well, has to be considered one of the best all time. I know they were talking after the game with some of the players on their defense, and a lot of them were comparing themselves to the 85 Bears, the steel curtain of the 1970s with the Steelers, the 2000 Ravens who killed the Giants in that Super Bowl. So, I mean, the Seahawks, really good defense, obviously.
Yeah, but I would not overlook the Broncos' defense, at least in the first half. You got to see, it was 22-0. I mean, you think of it, in the first quarter alone, the Seahawks had the ball the whole quarter, basically, driving down, and they forced them to 2 field goals. So you really can't overlook the Broncos' D were not the issue in the game. It was Peyton Manning in the offense. Those wide receivers who were so dominant all year looked shell-shocked.
Yeah, I mean, Peyton obviously struggled a little bit throughout the game. The overthrow that on the Julius Thomas pick was on him. but I think that the line had some trouble giving Payton protection, and the receivers did make some mistakes. We saw uncharacteristic fumble from Demaryius. I think the Broncos just looked pretty much shell-shocked out there, and sometimes it's just one of those games where you can get nothing going, and that was one of those games for the Broncos. I mean, they played the worst game of their season and the biggest game of the season, and so that's what's going to happen. So just a little Super Bowl precedent here. This is the 6th time that a number 1 defense played a number 1 offense, and 5 of those 6 times the defense came away victorious. The only exception being the 1990 49ers when they beat the Bears. When they beat the Broncos, excuse me.
So wait, the offenses have been the defenses?
No, the defenses have been
okay.
the offensive. This was the 5th of 6 times that happened. So once again, the number 1 defense beating the number 1 offense.
Well, I mean, I'm not exactly sure about those games before, but I can really see that happening because the Seahawks, this got Manning and the quarterbacks out of their groove, and it just seemed like the whole time he was not comfortable. I mean, I saw Manning so unlike himself, rolling out of the pocket, although he was forced to because his line could protect him, but throwing passes across his body, it was just so uncharacteristic of a Hall of Fame quarterback, which Manning is. It was just, they got him out of his groove, and they did exactly what you had to do. All the analysts were saying, you gotta get him out of his pocket, you gotta get him moving. The Seahawks did every single thing right.
So, just briefly on Payton's legacy. He's now 11-12 in the postseason, under 500. That's the most postseason losses anybody has ever had. He has 8 one-and-dones, and only Fran Tarkenton, Jim Kelly, and John Elway have had more Super Bowl losses.
Wow, pulling some old names there. I mean, Manning has just not shown himself in the playoffs. I don't think anyone can dispute that he's probably the best
regular season,
yes.
Wilt Chamberlain of regular seasons.
But when you look at your postseason, and people always say postseason makes the player, makes the legacy, I just can't put him as my best, at least, quarterback. He obviously one of the top 5, in my opinion, maybe even top 3, but I just don't think you can put him as the best quarterback, considering his postseason play has been that just terrible.
Yeah, I mean, this was obviously a big legacy game for Payton, and he did not play well. And I think that this actually really does hurt his legacy. Yeah. When you're under 500 in the postseason, and you have so many one-and-dones, and you do only have that one Super Bowl to hang your hat on, it's tough to argue that you are the greatest quarterback of all time.
And I can't lie, as a Patriots fan, being a Tom Brady fan, obviously, I'm happy Peyton didn't win the Super Bowl. It makes my boy Tom Brady look a whole lot better. But not non-biased. It doesn't look good on his resume when you lose, when you're 1-2 in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously it's better to get there 3 times than to get there just that one time, but
the performance was just downright awful.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't overlook that.
He now has 2 pretty weak Super Bowl performances. This one against the Hawks, and
threw away the New Orleans game on a terrible interception.
Yeah, to Tracy Porter. So the Manning legacy will continue, but this should be more about the Seahawks.
That's true.
We have Russell Wilson, the 3rd youngest quarterback to win a Super Bowl, only behind Big Ben when they beat the Seahawks in 2006, and Brady when they beat the Rams in 2002. Russell Wilson, what do you see out there? Just all season.
Well, all season he's just been doing what he has to do to the team, and what I mean by that is he doesn't have to do more than most quarterbacks because he is put in such a good situation with a great D. He knows that they're not going to give up a lot of points, so he knows he doesn't have to force the issue. But he's also very smart. I think that's one of the things he's really developed quicker than guys like Newton and Kaepernick, where he knows when he has to hold the ball in his hands, when he has to throw it away, and when he can keep the ball. I think he does that a little quicker than both those quarterbacks, which is why he, in my opinion, is my favorite rookie or sophomore quarterback, even more than your boy Andrew Luck, Corey.
Well, that's for another time, that argument. But I think that one of the things about Wilson that you can't argue is just there are some guys who are leaders. And Wilson is one of those guys. And you see him, his calming presence on the field. Yeah. He's just so smart out there, always makes the right throw. Even at the beginning of the game, we saw he missed one high, maybe some Super Bowl nerves, really calmed down. And he's just one of those really reliable, steady quarterbacks, which is exactly something that Seattle needs with such a good defense. Also, we need to talk about their Super Bowl winning MVP, Malcolm Smith. He finished the 8th Super Bowl with a defensive player winning the MVP, and the 3rd linebacker with Chuck Howley from the 1971 Cowboys and Ray Lewis with the 2001 Ravens. First defensive player to win since 2003, the MVP. That Seattle defense.
And I'm not going to lie, I really didn't know of him before the game, but I actually learned he was Steve Smith's brother, and he just did a fantastic job. 9 tackles, 5 solo tackles, a fumble recovery, and an interception, which obviously put the game kind of out of reach at 22-0. At 22-0 at that point, with that 69 interception return.
Yeah, so, I mean, Malcolm Smith goes on, wins the MVP as a defensive player, and we have the Seahawks winning their Super Bowl. So from CoryTellAllSports, we will see you shortly. Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.